Welcome, everyone, to History Gone Wilder, part of Have History Will Travel. I'm your host, the Wilder historian, Dr. Lucas Wilder. And last time, John Bell Hood graduated from West Point and served on the Texas frontier before offering his services to the Confederacy. Now we follow Hood through the first few years of the war. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, join the Patreon page, and purchase something from one of my online stores. Every little bit helps. Thank you. John Bell Hood reached Robert E. Lee's headquarters in Richmond, Virginia, and the commander of Virginia's forces ordered him to the peninsula formed by the York and James rivers. When Hood asked when he should set off, Lee replied, "Before you dine." Hood made it to John B. Magruder's command near Yorktown and Williamsburg, watching the Union forces of Benjamin F. Butler stationed at Fort Monroe. Hood was to train the cavalry under Magruder's command, but there was a problem. Hood was a lieutenant, and the officers he was to train were higher ranking than him, so Hood was promoted to major to outrank those cavalry officers. Small Union detachments fanned out from Fort Monroe, attempting to get intelligence on the Confederate position. Hood was determined to nab one of these groups in an attempt to stop their patrols. He and his cavalry hid in a swamp and waited for one of these patrols to pass. When they did, they attacked them from the rear and chased them into a tree line, where Hood and his staff personally dismounted and helped in smoking them out of their position. Many got away, but the engagement resulted in the Federals losing 2 dead, 1 wounded, and 11 captured. Hood was exceedingly praised for his ability. As one of his biographers explained, it was a typical Hood attack. He went in with guns blazing and shot it out. On the other hand, it was, of course, an insignificant skirmish, but from the praise heaped on Hood, one might think he had won a major engagement. It was instances like this that resulted in Hood's promotion, this time to lieutenant colonel, and soon to colonel. He was taken away from the cavalry and placed in command of a rambunctious regiment of Texans. The 4th Texas had given their former commanders trouble, but the Confederate War Department thought that Hood might be able to handle these ruffians. Many believed that the reason Hood could command such rough troops was the fact that he had the size to back up his threats. The raw-boned Kentuckian trained the Texans, who were unsure of their new commander. In a few days the feeling was gone and everyone seemed to be perfectly contented. His commanding appearance, manly deportment, quick perception, courteous manners, and decision of character readily impressed the officers and men that he was the man to govern them in the camp and command them on the field, and his thorough acquaintance with every department of the service satisfied everyone with his competency for the position. The Texas regiments of the 1st, 4th, and 5th, as well as a group of Georgians and South Carolinians, were brigaded under Lewis T. Wigfall. The brigade didn't take part in the First Battle of Manassas, but were sent to Northern Virginia following the battle. It was during the fall and through the winter of 1861 into 1862 that Hood impressed upon his men that they needed to be disciplined in camp as they were on the battlefield. Men who stay up all night, he explained, can't fight well the next day, so he instituted strict rules that prevented the men from keeping one another up at all hours. He also made it a point to declare to his men that no other unit in the Confederate Army should get more trophies from battle than them, that they should strive to be the best the Confederacy had. When spring dawned in 1862, the Union commander of the Army of the Potomac, George McClellan, implemented his plan to land his army on the peninsula of Virginia and push all the way up to Richmond, the capital of the Confederacy. Confederate forces in northern Virginia were commanded by Joseph E. Johnston, and Johnston began moving his army south to guard against McClellan's threat. Hood's Texans took a train from Fredericksburg to Richmond, then marched down the peninsula to Yorktown. The brigade was in the division of William Whiting, and they helped man the position spanning the peninsula. But as McClellan's large army of around 100,000 pressed up the landmass, the Confederates began to give ground, giving resistance at Williamsburg and other locations. The Union division of William B. Franklin was disembarking at Eltham's Landing, posing a threat to the Confederate wagon train, and Hood was called on to enter major combat for the first time. Hood advanced on the Federals and was close enough to shake hands before he realized how close he actually was to the Union troops. Both sides blazed away at one another with their rifled muskets. Hood handled his regiments well, bolstering his flanks and putting increased pressure on the Union line. Hood led from the front, a habit he became famous for, and maneuvered the Texans and Georgians and South Carolinians to charge and chase Franklin's troops back to the safety of the gunboats. Hood had won the first significant engagement he was part of. Johnston, the Army commander, allegedly brought Hood to his headquarters and asked him about the splendid throwing back of the enemy, saying, "General Hood, have you given an illustration of the Texas idea of feeling an enemy gently and then falling back? What would your Texans have done, sir, if I had ordered them to charge and drive back the enemy?" Hood responded, "General, I suppose they would have driven them into the river and tried to swim out and capture the gunboats." McClellan's army inched closer to Richmond, and when Johnston sallied forth to attack them, that resulted in the Battle of Seven Pines, and Johnston was seriously wounded. Robert E. Lee then took command of the Confederate Army. Lee heard Thomas Stonewall Jackson's pleas for the reinforcements in the Shenandoah Valley and sent Whiting's division, which included Hood and his brigade. It was at the tail end of Jackson's famed Valley Campaign, so Hood didn't get to take an active role in one of the war's most famous series of engagements. However, he did get introduced to Jackson's secrecy when given orders. To confuse any spies and Unionist civilians who may give information to the Federal Army, Jackson gave orders for all the men to answer with "I don't know" when asked questions. When Jackson caught some of Hood's Texans climbing a tree to steal some cherries, he asked them where they were going, to what command they belonged, and what state they were from. All the answers came back, "I don't know." Jackson asked what the meaning of this was, and the Texans responded, not knowing that it was Jackson, that Stonewall and Hood both told them they wouldn't know anything until after the next fight, and that that's how they should respond. While marching in the upper valley, Hood came across one of his men who had apparently gotten into a moonshine still. Hood asked the seated man what was wrong and why he wasn't with his company. The man responded that he was feeling weak and no account. Hood had instructed some men to take charge of him when the drunk man quickly reacted, claiming he had the smallpox and not to touch him. Hood just laughed and said to leave him be, that the teamsters would be by to pick him up. Jackson was beckoned to Richmond by Lee to take part in what became the 7 Days battles, and Hood came with him, Whiting's division now being part of Jackson's command. Stonewall uncharacteristically acted sluggish in this first part of the series of battles, resulting in Hood taking little part, but at Gaines' Mill, Hood would make a huge name for himself. Numerous attacks against the Federal position at Gaines' Mill resulted in horrendous bloodshed. Whiting's division was called up, and Hood personally went to Lee for further instructions. Lee told Hood about the need to break the enemy line and asked, "Can you break his line?" "I will try," came the reply from Hood. As Hood rode off, Lee raised his hat and said, "May God be with you." Hood readied his men, ordered his troops to go to right shoulder shift, then quickly marched toward the Union line. At a distance, artillery ripped holes in their line, ending the lives of many officers, but still the Texans, South Carolinians, and Georgians pressed on. With a yell and brandishing bayonets, Hood's brigade, led by Hood himself, swarmed over the first line of Union entrenchments, and then the second, pushing past the artillery in their way. Hood and the rest of the division were able to send the Yankees to the rear, only stopped by a cavalry charge to halt the pursuers. One of the Union's cavalry officers was shot, throwing its rider to the ground nearly at Hood's feet. The officer had been with Hood in the old army, part of Company K of the 2nd United States Cavalry. Even success created chaos in a battle, and as Hood looked around to organize his command after taking the Federal position, Lieutenant Langdon Haskell, General Wade Hampton's son-in-law, offered his services to Hood as an aide. Hood was about to take him up on his offer, but noticed that the man's arm had been completely shot away. Hood ordered the man to go to the hospital, despite Haskell's reluctance. During the night, as Hood looked for his wounded, a weak voice called his name. When he finally found where the voice was coming from, he found it belonged to William Chambliss, a Union officer who he had served with in Texas. Hood made sure he was sent to a field hospital to be taken care of, just as his own officers. Hood's gallant charge won over Lee and Jackson both, with Jackson looking over the hard-fought battlefield and declaring, "The men who carried this position were soldiers indeed."